The world of sports is a stage of human triumph and unwavering passion. It is a place where we watch legends rise and dreams come true. But sometimes, that stage is tainted by a darker side. These scandals, large and small, are chronicles of trust betrayed, of power corrupted, and of the long road back to integrity. Among the most profound of these narratives is the story of the 2015 FIFA corruption case, an investigation that pulled back the curtain on a global web of deceit and exposed the inner workings of an empire built on bribery and fraud. For decades, the Fédération Internationale de Football Association, or FIFA, stood as the supreme governing body of the world's most beloved sport. From the electrifying spectacle of the World Cup to the local youth leagues that nurture future stars, FIFA's influence was absolute. It was an organization that presented itself as a beacon of global unity, a force for good that used the beautiful game to build bridges between nations. However, beneath this polished exterior, a different reality was taking shape. The sheer power and immense wealth flowing into FIFA, billions of dollars from broadcast rights, sponsorships, and marketing deals, created an environment ripe for exploitation. This was an ecosystem where a select few could operate with impunity, leveraging their positions for personal gain. The first whispers of discontent were easily dismissed as sour grapes or unsubstantiated rumors. But as the allegations grew louder and more specific, a more sinister pattern began to emerge. The focus of the inquiry centered on the very heart of FIFA's commercial operations. For years, the rights to some of the world's most lucrative football tournaments were not being awarded through a fair and transparent process. Instead, they were allegedly being sold to the highest bidder in a shadow market, a system fueled by backroom deals, illicit payments, and hidden bank accounts. The scale of the alleged corruption was staggering, with indictments describing a systemic scheme of bribery and kickbacks that had been ongoing for more than 2 decades, reaching the very highest echelons of the organization's leadership. The investigation, led by the U.S. Department of Justice, was a meticulous and lengthy process that slowly pieced together a vast and intricate web of financial transactions. It followed the money as it moved from sports marketing companies to offshore accounts, a trail of evidence that ultimately led to the doorstep of FIFA's inner circle. The world watched in disbelief as the scale of the malfeasance became clear, a painful betrayal of trust for millions of fans who believed in the integrity of the sport. It was a scandal that transcended soccer, becoming a global story about power, greed, and the difficult but necessary pursuit of justice. The events of one fateful morning in May would forever change the course of FIFA's history and send a clear message that no institution, no matter how powerful, is above the law. It was a shocking 24-year scheme of widespread corruption, which rocked the football world. The U.S. Department of Justice, DOJ, gave a press release titled 9 FIFA officials and 5 corporate executives indicted for racketeering conspiracy and corruption. The full scope of the corruption scandal was laid bare in this extensive criminal indictment, which detailed a systemic scheme involving widespread bribery, fraud, and money laundering. The U.S. investigation, which began in the early 1990s, exposed a deep-rooted culture of corruption within the organization and its affiliates, as officials and their conspirators allegedly abused their positions of trust for personal gain. The key charges included racketeering conspiracy, wire fraud, and money laundering. These charges stemmed from the use of U.S. financial institutions to facilitate the illicit payments, providing the critical link for prosecution. Officials and sports marketing executives were accused of accepting over $150 million in bribes and kickbacks in exchange for media and marketing rights to major soccer tournaments, as well as for the hosting rights of the 2010 World Cup in South Africa. A key part of the case centered on a $10 million payment made by the South African government to secure the hosting bid for the 2010 World Cup. This money, intended for a football development program, was allegedly diverted to corrupt officials. The indictment also noted the involvement of an unnamed sports equipment company, which was accused of paying millions in bribes to secure sponsorship contracts, further illustrating the pervasive nature of the corruption. The scandal ultimately led to the arrest of high-ranking FIFA officials in 2015, the forced resignation of FIFA President Sepp Blatter just days after his re-election, and lifetime bans from the sport for many of the implicated figures. The morning of May 27, 2015, saw a dramatic turning point. It was an ordinary day in Zurich that would be remembered forever. At the luxurious Bauer au Lac Hotel, a sanctuary for the world's elite, a quiet pre-dawn raid unfolded. Swiss authorities, acting on behalf of the U.S., moved swiftly and discreetly, arresting 7 high-ranking FIFA officials. The arrests were a coordinated effort to prevent collusion and sent shockwaves through the organization just ahead of its annual Congress. The scene was surreal. Powerful men, accustomed to private jets and 5-star treatment, were escorted out of their rooms with their personal belongings in plastic bags. Among those taken into custody were 2 current FIFA vice presidents, Jeffrey Webb and Eugenio Figueiredo, who were key figures in the CONCACAF and CONMEBOL confederations respectively. The indictment against Webb was particularly damning, painting a picture of an official who leveraged his position to accept millions in bribes for media and marketing rights to tournaments. Figueiredo, from Uruguay, was accused of similar crimes related to the Copa America. The investigation also brought down other notable figures, including Jack Warner, a former FIFA vice president and the powerful president of CONCACAF for over 2 decades. Though not arrested in Zurich, Warner's alleged history of corruption was extensive, including taking kickbacks related to World Cup bids. Jose Maria Marin, a member of FIFA's organizing committee, and Nicolas Liaz, former FIFA Executive Committee member and CONMEBOL president, were also charged, highlighting the global reach of the alleged conspiracy that spanned continents and multiple decades. The net was cast far and wide, catching figures who had long been considered untouchable. A pivotal and in many ways an unforgettable figure in the investigation was Chuck Blazer, a former CONCACAF General Secretary. Known for his lavish lifestyle, which included 2 apartments in Trump Tower for himself and his cats, Blazer was a larger-than-life character who became the FBI's secret weapon. Facing his own legal troubles, he became a cooperating witness for the FBI, providing crucial testimony and evidence. Famously, he wore a wire for years, secretly recording meetings with FIFA executives at restaurants and events. His testimony and crucial information were instrumental in building the case against his former colleagues. His cooperation provided the federal prosecutors with an unprecedented look into the inner workings of FIFA's corrupt financial dealings. The initial arrests were just the beginning. A superseding indictment later that year brought the total number of people implicated to more than 24. The new charges reached deeper into the hierarchy, targeting figures like Alfredo Howitt, the successor to Jeffrey Webb at CONCACAF, and Marco Polo Del Nero, the president of the Brazilian Football Confederation. The charges revealed how media companies allegedly funneled money through a network of shell corporations and offshore accounts to secure lucrative deals. The scale and complexity of the scheme were staggering, suggesting that the corruption was not just the work of a few bad actors, but was deeply ingrained in the very structure of the organization. The scandal had a profound and lasting impact on the world of soccer. The most immediate effect was the stunning and highly symbolic resignation of Sepp Blatter, the long-serving FIFA president. Just 4 days after being re-elected to his 5th term, Blatter announced his departure, The overwhelming pressure from the unfolding scandal, which had tainted his leadership and threatened to dismantle the very institution he controlled, made his position utterly untenable. The world watched, stunned, as Blatter, who had been at the helm for 17 years and saw himself as a benevolent dictator of the sport, finally conceded defeat to the relentless tide of public outrage and legal pressure. In the immediate aftermath, FIFA's own ethics committee, now under intense scrutiny, took swift and decisive action. It issued lifetime bans and lengthy suspensions to many of the officials charged in the U.S. indictment. This included both Blatter and his heir apparent, Michel Platini, the president of UEFA and a former French football star. Platini's downfall was a particularly bitter pill for the European football community, as he was widely seen as the future of the organization. The ethics investigations against Blatter and Platini were separate from the U.S. criminal case, but were a direct consequence of the scandal. They were accused of conflicts of interest and a breach of loyalty, specifically for an alleged disloyal payment of 2 million Swiss francs from Blatter to Platini in 2011, which was deemed a secret and corrupt transaction. The bans effectively removed the old guard, creating a power vacuum and paving the way for a complete overhaul of the organization's governance. The entire affair prompted widespread calls for significant reforms within FIFA to improve transparency and accountability. The organization's culture was widely criticized as being deeply rooted in greed, secrecy, and corruption, which led to a complete overhaul of its leadership and governance structure in a desperate effort to rebuild its shattered reputation. The subsequent election of Gianni Infantino as president marked a new era, with promises of greater financial transparency, term limits for officials, and a more independent ethics committee. However, critics argued that the reforms did not go far enough and that the systemic issues remained. The U.S. investigation also triggered a wave of other criminal inquiries into FIFA officials by nations around the world, creating a global ripple effect. For example, Swiss authorities launched their own investigation into the contentious 2018 and 2022 World Cup bids awarded to Russia and Qatar, respectively. This demonstrated a global recognition of the severity of the problem and the need for international cooperation to address it. In the wake of the arrests, sports marketing companies were forced to reevaluate their relationships with football federations. The public outcry from fans and sponsors was immense, forcing the sport to confront its long-standing culture of impunity. Finally, the U.S. Department of Justice has been working to distribute the vast sums of money recovered from the case to victims of the corruption, a lengthy process that aimed to provide some measure of justice. Millions of dollars were returned to football federations and associations that had been defrauded, with the funds earmarked for development programs and youth leagues, a bittersweet form of restitution for a sport so deeply wounded. The scandal proved that even the most powerful institutions are not immune to the rule of law. There have been other scandals in football history over the years. Another story that happened is in the world of Italian football. A story of whispers and phone calls and the quiet shuffling of papers that changed everything. This is the story of Calciopoli, a story of a secret world, hidden in plain sight, just beneath the roar of the crowds. The word itself, Calciopoli, translates to Footballville. It's a name given to the scandal by the media, a direct reference to a much larger political scandal in Italy's history, known as Tangentopoli or Bribesville. It's a word that feels so small and yet contains so much history and emotion. It evokes an entire city built on football, with all its hopes, its glory, and its hidden secrets. A city where every result, every victory, had a shadow side, a quiet, unseen decision that made it possible. In May of 2006, just as the world's attention was turning toward the World Cup, A different kind of drama was unfolding behind the scenes. It began not with a splashy headline, but with a quiet investigation by prosecutors in Naples. They were initially looking into a different case entirely, one involving the world of sports agencies. But in the course of their work, they began to intercept phone calls. They were simply listening. And what they heard in those hundreds of hours of intercepted phone calls was not what they expected. It was a secret network, a hidden web of relationships between high-level club executives and the officials responsible for appointing referees. It was like listening to a hidden drama unfold, one word at a time, each mundane conversation holding a secret. At the very center of this intricate web was one man, Luciano Moggi, the powerful general manager of the famous football club, Juventus. He was a titan in the world of Italian football, a man whose quiet influence could be felt everywhere. The phone transcripts revealed that Moggi and other officials from prominent Serie A clubs, including AC Milan, Fiorentina, Lazio, and Regina, were in regular, intimate contact with the two men who held the power to shape the league, Paolo Bergamo and Pierluigi Pareto, the referee designators. These were the officials whose quiet, unseen decisions determined who would officiate which games. The calls were mundane, everyday conversations, which made the quiet corruption all the more chilling. The transcripts painted a picture of a culture of quiet influence. The goal wasn't necessarily to directly fix the outcome of a match with a single bad call. That was far too risky and too loud. Instead, it was about creating a systemic, quiet edge. These executives were pushing for favorable officials to be placed in charge of their matches. The calls discussed which referees were blacklisted from certain games and which ones could be counted on to be understanding. It was a delicate dance, a game played on a different field, where a word here or a suggestion there could shift the balance of an entire season. It was about stacking the deck, without anyone on the field even knowing it was happening. The conversations revealed a culture of whispered favors and subtle influence peddling, a shadow system that slowly, silently, corrupted the very foundation of the Italian Football League, like a slow-moving, invisible poison. In July 2006, Italy held its breath as shocking revelations sent ripples through the heart of football. A quiet sigh swept across the nation, but the fallout was anything but muted. A special sports tribunal gathered, and the world braced for verdicts that would rewrite history. Juventus, the jewel of Italian football, faced the fiercest storm. The club was stripped of its hard-earned titles from the 2004, 2005, and 2005-2006 seasons, as if two glorious years had vanished into thin air. The most dramatic twist? A plunge into Serie B, a division they had never known. Starting the season with a daunting 9-point penalty, the club was thrust into a fierce battle for redemption, a daunting task that would test their mettle. The repercussions were swift and severe. A mass exodus of star players unfolded like a tragic play. Icons like Fabio Cannavaro, Gianluca Zambrotta, and Zlatan Ibrahimovic departed, leaving behind a dressing room that echoed with the haunting silence of lost talent. The dynasty that once reigned supreme now lay in ruins, its future hanging by a thread. The quiet sadness of a once thriving team now felt palpable, a stark contrast to their previous glory. But the scandal's reach extended beyond Juventus. AC Milan, though spared the dreaded relegation, faced an 8-point deduction that loomed like a dark cloud over their season. It was a significant blow, yet the club rallied, determined to rise from the ashes. In a twist of fate, they defied the odds, clawing their way back to the top and seizing the Champions League title the following year. This silent comeback became a beacon of hope, a triumph forged in adversity, showcasing the resilience of a club that refused to be defined by scandal. Fiorentina and Lazio, too, found themselves ensnared in the scandal's web. Initially relegated to Serie B with point deductions, they fought back through successful appeals, remaining in the top division but burdened with significant penalties. Their journey became a testament to resilience in the face of turmoil, proving that even in the darkest times, determination could light the way. Even the smaller club, Regina, felt the tremors of the scandal, facing its own point deduction. The scandal's shadow loomed large, affecting clubs of all sizes and leaving an indelible mark on the league. The Italian football landscape was forever altered, a reminder that the beautiful game could be marred by the ugly realities of corruption. At the center of this storm were the architects of chaos. Luciano Moggi, the mastermind behind the scandal, and Juventus CEO Antonio Giraudo received lifetime bans, their once commanding presence erased from the pitch. The entire Juventus board resigned in disgrace, their legacy tarnished. Franco Carraro, president of the Italian Football Federation, stepped down, marking a moment of quiet reckoning for the sport's leadership. The echoes of their downfall reverberated through the corridors of power, a stark reminder that no one was above the law. As the dust settled, the echoes of this scandal reverberated through the air. The quiet sigh of a nation transformed into a thunderous call for change. Italy's football landscape would never be the same, a poignant reminder that even the mightiest can fall. Yet from the ashes, new stories would rise, weaving a narrative of resilience and rebirth. The struggles of Juventus and the triumphs of AC Milan would shape the future of Italian football, a testament to the enduring spirit of the beautiful game. In the aftermath, fans were left to grapple with the reality of their beloved sport. The once unquestioned loyalty to clubs was now tinged with skepticism. The passion that fueled stadiums was met with a new awareness of the darker side of football. Yet, amidst the turmoil, a sense of unity emerged. Fans rallied behind their teams, determined to support them through thick and thin, proving that the love for the game could transcend even the most profound betrayals. The scandal served as a catalyst for change within the Italian football system. New regulations and oversight measures were introduced, aimed at preventing such corruption from taking root again. The lessons learned from this dark chapter became a guiding light for the future, ensuring that the integrity of the sport would be upheld. As the years passed, the scars of the scandal began to fade, replaced by a renewed sense of hope. Juventus, though relegated, fought valiantly to reclaim its place among the elite. AC Milan's triumphs became a symbol of resilience, inspiring other clubs to rise from adversity. The spirit of competition thrived, and the beautiful game regained its luster. Ultimately, the events of 2006 reshaped not only the clubs involved, but the entire fabric of Italian football. The quiet sigh that once echoed through the nation transformed into a resounding anthem of resilience, unity, and the unwavering love for the game. The legacy of that tumultuous time would forever remind fans that football, despite its flaws, remains a powerful force that can bring people together, igniting passion and hope in the hearts of millions. As long as there is football, there will be controversies and scandals. Let's take a quiet moment together to listen to the latest one such story. A story about the beautiful game and the quiet, crushing shame that can come after the final whistle. Picture it now, the 1990s. The pitch is green, the stadiums are roaring, and a new generation of footballers are making fortunes. Their careers are a whirlwind of bright lights and thunderous applause. Names you know, like Danny Murphy, Craig Short, and Rod Wallace. They were heroes on the field, their future so bright, so full of promise. They trusted in the future they were building and the people who promised to protect it. These players, so focused on their art, needed someone to guide them. And so, they turned to advisors with kind smiles and reassuring words. People like those at Kingsbridge Asset Management. The advice was simple: invest in tax-incentivized film schemes and foreign property, promises of even greater wealth. The players signed the papers. They put their faith and their fortunes in a handshake, and then the whistle blew for the final time. The game ended. But the story was just beginning. Slowly, quietly, the dreams began to crumble. The investments failed. The tax man came knocking, demanding millions in unpaid bills. The players, once so vibrant and strong, found themselves visited by bailiffs, left with nothing but the haunting echo of what they had lost. The shame, the quiet, heavy shame. Danny Murphy, a hero on the pitch, spoke of losing everything. He struggled with depression, with a feeling of deep, profound guilt. Other players, like Craig Short, described the deep sadness and the anger, the feeling of being betrayed by those they trusted most. But in the quiet, a new team was formed. 11 men, the V11, united not by a club badge, but by a shared feeling of loss and a quiet resolve for justice. They came together to tell their story and to warn others. They are fighting still for an acknowledgement of the wrongdoing, a quiet plea for accountability. And so, we are left with the quiet after the storm, a reminder that sometimes the most dangerous plays happen far from the pitch. It's in these quiet moments that the true price of the game is paid. Good night and sleep well.